When making the move, you want to know where to buy a home that's in your price value, where to understand where the population increase is happening, if the schools are growing, if there's job opportunities, what is going to happen with the appreciation of equity in your home. All of that in this video, talking about the top 5 cities in Utah County, what makes them the top 5 and why, with population, business, schools, appreciation, all of that in this video coming up. First and foremost, my name is Jenny. Hi and welcome to my page. If this is your first time, make sure you click the link below to subscribe and that bell for notifications to get notified every time I make a video for the weekly updates. And if you are someone looking to buy and move to Utah or in Utah County, I am the realtor for you and teaching and guiding you where to go, how to find the right home for you in your price range. I get calls from people just like you guys, from wanting to move in 9 days up to 9 months. And I definitely want to make sure I get in touch with you. So make sure you click the link below, get in touch with me through a Calendly link, and you can actually find out an instant value on your home worth right down below. And I can definitely talk to you about selling your home in Utah as well. I have been a realtor for over 9 years and I have helped dozens and dozens of people in situations just like yours. So reach out, let's have the conversation. Until then, let's jump into the video that you've been looking forward to, and that is the top 5 cities in Utah County. Okay, so I've got my laptop here. There's a ton of information to go over in this video, so I'm really excited to jump into it. First and foremost, the first top 5 cities that are growing in Utah County based on population, home value, and jobs. Number 1 is Lehi, and the second is Eagle Mountain. The third is Saratoga Springs. The fourth is Spanish Fork, and last but not least, Highland. Now, all of these cities have very different variances as type of living, close up access of commuting, understanding the price range. The neighboring city to Lehi, which is Highland, has a very different demographic as far as the land and acreage you can buy and the house value and the cost of living and their neighboring cities. But they're both on the top 5 possible best cities to live in Utah County. So we're going to dive deep into each and every one of these in comparing all of them. Utah alone is on the ranking of the top charts as the fastest growing states in Utah as far as population and people moving to Utah in general. Now, only that, we have lots of families here that have lots of children, so the population increases just within our own walls as well. There are 23 cities in Utah County, and Lehi happens to be the number 1 on those. So let's dive a little bit more into Lehi and understand what makes Lehi Lehi. Now, when I grew up, I was raised in Alpine, and Alpine was a very small, quaint town when I moved there over 20 years ago. And Lehi was desolate. It was a cheap city to live in. Nobody wanted to live there. You've got high winds. You're right there by the I-15, so you get lots of noise. So nobody really wanted to live there. Now, within 20 years, actually, I should say within the last 10 years, Lehi has literally tripled its growth because of all the infrastructures of businesses that have come into Lehi. You have over 20 businesses. A lot of them are project-based with programming, IT, tech. You've got Vivint, you've got Adobe, you've got a lot of new platform companies coming in that rent business spaces. Now, a lot of that has to do with Thanksgiving Point. They owned a lot of property, and back in the day, I remember my father saying, I don't know what's going to happen to Thanksgiving Point because they're in so much debt, and they had this massive, beautiful acreage of gardens, and they didn't have enough people coming to see it. They were really financially in trouble. So what Thanksgiving Point did is they began to build an infrastructure in leasing their land and then building buildings to lease out those lots to businesses. And now it's the new and up and coming business park, and it happens to be located in Lehi. Now, the housing shortage in Utah is actually 9%. That means we are actually a housing shortage of around 37,000 homes for the population growth increase. Now, a lot of infrastructures are in place. New build is continually on fire throughout Utah County and Salt Lake County, but particularly Saratoga Springs has been on fire with building condos, townhouses, and single families. A lot of them are with the new builds. Now, if you want to compare Lehi and Saratoga, I have a video that I have made literally comparing the 2 cities that are neighboring cities in the link above. And if you want to learn more about particularly Lehi, I have also made a video on that as well. Now, the contributing factors when it comes to the shortage is obviously the the population, the infrastructures of building, and the massive economic expansion of businesses that have come in. Now, if you were to look at the map, you have Highland, and then you have Lehi, and then you have Saratoga. They all are neighboring cities, and then happens to be the fourth one that is on the list of top cities is Eagle Mountain, which is the neighboring city to Saratoga. Now, the types of living between those four cities are very different. The population of Lehi is 82,000 residents. The population of Saratoga Springs is 47,000. Now, if you look into the land mass of between those two, they have about the same similar in land mass, but the type of living is very different. Now, Saratoga Springs used to be rural living. Rural living actually gave an opportunity for loans to give you a no down payment assisted loan because of COVID pushing back the population census report. But now that we have the census report, as of 18 months ago, Saratoga Springs is no longer a rural area, but it did cause mass influx of population, which is why it's considered a fast growing city. Now, I've also made a video on builders and builders particularly in Saratoga and in Lehi, if you want to click the link above, on knowing what to build, on what builder to use if you're interested in buying a new home in these areas. Now, if you look at Eagle Mountain, we have Highland, we have Lehi, we have Saratoga, and then we have Eagle Mountain. They're all chained linked together as far as landmass is concerned, but the difference is Lehi and Highland are on the eastern side of the I-15, and Saratoga and Eagle Mountain are on the west side of the I-15. Living on the west side of the I-15 has always been one of those lesser living, cheaper, because it's not as close to the Wasatch Mountains. More of the population have been closer to the Wasatch Mountain, which means home buyers could actually move west of I-15 and get a home for a cheaper value. Lehi happens to be on both the west side and the east side of the I-15 for landmass. It's about a 50-50 split between Lehi. So Lehi really encompasses the I-15. But if you're to move out further to Eagle Mountain, the residents are actually 51,000, which is higher than Saratoga Springs, which Eagle Mountain is still considered a rural area due to the last census report, which means you can possibly get a rural loan with a no down payment assistance. Now, Highland has only 22,000 residents, and that is due to smaller land mass and be able to have larger lots, which means there are less homes. Highland is really known for making larger homes on larger lots. So if we were to actually look at how much the housing costs compared to these cities, Highland would be the most expensive one. But let's not forget number 5. Well, actually number 4, and Highland is number 5. Number 4 is Spanish Fork. Now, Spanish Fork has 45,000 residents. I've actually done a video on Spanish Fork with link above as well, talking about its most family-oriented city. It's got a small town vibe feel. You've still got farmers down there. You've got the rodeo down there. You've got apple orchards in the neighboring city of Springville. It has a smaller pace, but its population is very similar to Saratoga Springs, where because there was more land, buyers got pushed out into more of the southern and the western sites of Utah because of the housing prices. Now, if we were to break down the housing prices, approximately Lehi's medium range for a home, a single family home, is $620,000. Saratoga is $580,000. Eagle Mountain is $550,000. Highland is $850,000, and Spanish Fork is $499,000. So you can see Spanish Fork is actually going to be the cheapest. It doesn't mean that you're going to get a smaller home out there, but because there are older homes out there, it balances out this range. And in the video for Spanish Fork, I actually walk you through a particular new build in Spanish Fork and what the cost would look like for a new build. It's actually higher than $499,000, and that is because it's a new build. But again, because there's a lot of older homes. So if I were to say the oldest cities as far as population is concerned, Spanish Fork and Highland are the oldest cities because you're going to have more demographic of older homes. Now, Lehi's definitely in the ranking with that of having older homes and smaller homes, but definitely Saratoga Springs and Eagle Mountain are very fresh and new homes. Again, it was on the rural ranking before the census report. So you have to make sure you understand the demographics of where you want to live for each of these based on pricing, based on commuting for your job, based on business opportunities. But let's talk about schools. So the thing is, when it comes to schools, it's all going to depend on the demographic of the wealth and the ability children have as far as mass and population of people. If you're looking around Lehi and Highland for schooling, you have a larger population. Therefore, you having an increase of students. Because Lehi and Highland only have three high schools between the two cities, you also have Alpine that comes in and American Fork. You only have the 3 high schools, which make it a 27-to-1 around around that 25, 27 to 1 ratio with the students. You go more outskirts to Eagle Mountain, Saratoga, and Spanish Fork, you're going to have the smaller ratio, whereas Spanish Fork, you can even get 22 to 1. Whereas in the average of Utah, the student to teacher ratio is 25 to 1 student. So we do have larger schools. These are not podunk towns where you're going to only get 15 people in your class. You're going to get upwards of 1,000 people in your graduation class, which causes for competition in sports and recreation activities. But also the pro in that is it causes the ability to have more opportunities because you have more funding and you have more students in each of those cities. So if I were to say the rankings of all those schools, they're all very similar when it comes to academics of reading and writing and extracurricular activities and things as science and history. Utah is also very well known for having good schools. Now, when I say good schools, we also have private schools as well. We have academies that you can get listed on and get supported through government funding on those. And they're spread all throughout Utah County. So whether you live in any of these cities, you can have access to those as well. Now, at the end of this video, I want to talk about my favorite thing, which is the appreciation value based on the type of city that you live in. Because the appreciation value, we have a blanket number, but if you live in a city that has up and rising upcoming businesses, land opportunities, population increase, your appreciation value on your home is going to go up. But before I jump into that, I want to talk about businesses. Because these are up and coming cities, there's some of them that have more businesses than others. People have found Lehi and Saratoga, which I compare the two in the video link above. I compare the two cities. They say that Lehi and Saratoga are the best for transit cities because we're close to the point of the mountain which separates Salt Lake City from Utah County. So if you work in Salt Lake City, you have the ability to commute and still live in Utah County. Whereas if you lived in Spanish Fork and in Eagle Mountain and Highland, you are much further away, at least 10 minutes away from the freeway. And in Spanish Fork, you're much further away from up north where Salt Lake City is at, which causes an influx of people to say that living in Lehi and Saratoga is a really good medium ground for commuting to a business, whether it's down south or up north, because you're right by the point of the mountain, which divides the two counties. Now, companies that are coming in for Lehi, just a couple of fun ones to note. Panera Bread, you have Texas Instruments, which bought out the multi-million-dollar building that has been sitting there for over 30 years, which was the only business building that existed when I lived in Alpine. It's hard to see now from the way that they've built the road, but it is a huge thing, offering over 800 jobs and a massive infrastructure. And then you have Gab Wireless. I actually own a Gab Wireless for my son. It's a children's watch and you can navigate with them and know where the GPS tracker is on that. So you're getting larger companies coming into Lehi, but particularly in Eagle Mountain or in Saratoga. Saratoga has a lot of infrastructures of trying to build a recreational center. They want to build more of a library system. They're working more on the city's infrastructures. They've had literally dozens of new restaurants come in just within the last year. You've got the Costco, you've got the Walmart, you've got the Smiths, you've got the Vasa Fitness, you have the Wendy's and the Taco Bell and the Chick-fil-A and the McDonald's. You've got it all when it comes to Saratoga. They don't have larger business companies coming in here though, because the massive transport system is located in Utah, which is the front runner and the UTA. Now, when you're talking about Eagle Mountain has two different types of land masses, and I'm going to be making a video on Eagle Mountain. So if you have anything you want me to mention about Eagle Mountain, leave a comment below so I can talk about it. I actually am a resident of Eagle Mountain. There's two sections of Eagle Mountain as far as land mass is concerned. There is what is called the ranches, which is closer to the I-15, and then there is the city center, which is literally about 12 minutes away from the ranches. But where the infrastructure is happening in Eagle Mountain as far as businesses are concerned is within city center. You're starting to get a lot of smaller business. So they have the Macy's out there, you have a Little Caesars, you have the Domino's, you have the Subway, you have the Wendy's, you have the Taco Bell. You've got the smaller conveniences, but that's it. There's a Ridley's in ranches, but that's it when it comes to Eagle Mountain. It's still very small and rural-like feeling. So you are using Saratoga Springs, which is only 10 minutes away for most people in Eagle Mountain to go do most of your shopping. Now, Highland is a completely different demographic. My uncle happens to be the mayor of Highland, and he's also running for office again in the next coming election. And he's done a lot of infrastructures on making a very family-oriented home and space city, but most particularly keeping it Highland as Highland is their motto, and having larger lots, which means a lower population. As you can see, it is the smallest population, but it is also the most expensive city to be living in. They do not have major convenience stores. They do not have an infrastructure set in there with recreational or, a police station or all those kind of things that Highland doesn't have. They have this small field farm. When I lived there over 20 years ago, Alpine and Highland Highland was definitely very small. All we had were gas stations and what we called the junction, maybe a snow cone shop and a candy store. That's really what I grew up with. So everything we had to do, we had to go to American Fork at the time because Lehi just didn't exist with businesses. So Highland, if you're wanting to move there, it's more of a quiet, more wealthy, established area with larger lots, and you're not really moving there for a business. All right, the last portion of this video is the appreciation of the home value that you are going to get comparing to the city that you live in with these top cities in Utah County. If I were to tell you from the best to the least appreciation, your best appreciation according to Cedar Valley Centennial website, you have Spanish Fork at 3.1% approximate annual appreciation rate because it's a growing city and it's a smaller town and they have more land opportunities to build. The second one is Highland. Now Highland is at a 2.9%, really close to that 3.1 because they have larger lots and the home prices, remember, were around $820,000. The third one is going to be Lehi at 2.5%, still growing due to businesses. And the fourth one is Eagle Mountain, a very lower at 1.8, and that is due to the commute that it has to take to get to the I-15. When I work with buyers who move to Eagle Mountain, they move there because it is the lowest value in Utah County that's closest to North Salt Lake. So remember, it was $550,000 an average price to buy a home in Eagle Mountain. Well, at Spanish Fork, it's $499, remember? And it also has more potential to grow. And it might be because those prices are lower. They have more of a gap of appreciation to move up. And the last but not least, Saratoga Springs is the smallest growing in appreciation, but it is the fastest growing in build and population. So there you go. You have a lot more competition in Saratoga, which is deflating the appreciation. It was so fun to do this video. And if you are someone who is looking to live in any of these cities or any of the cities in Salt Lake, Utah County, Wasatch County, upwards north in Ogden, down south, I have done it all. In St. George, in Cedar City, up here in Utah County, across the valley, over in Heber Valley, which is the Wasatch County, Salt Lake City, Draper, I've done it all. So I would love to help you if you are interested in buying any of these locations. And remember, if you are looking to list your home, make sure you click the link below to know the value of your home. And until then, guys, I will see you in my next video.